My example of land art is going to cover, I think, the most fun artist of the 20th and also 21st century. His name is Christo, and he worked in partnership with his wife, Jean-Claude, until she died in 2009. They really were a team, and she often, in fact, was the spokesperson for Christo's ideas and was instrumental in helping to get them become reality. Christo did work as a land artist, and just as an example, in the center bottom of the screen, you can see his surrounded islands, which are from Biscayne Bay, Florida, which were one of his, I'm going to say, prettiest of his creations. Uh, so, what is a land artist? A land artist is someone who works with the environment. There are many names to describe an artist who's doing this. One of those names is environmental art, and that individual would create something on the environment that draws us into the portion of the environment. We enter it, we interact with it, we come and look at it. We can also refer to this type of art as land art, and land art manipulates the land or the natural environment. That circle of stones that I just showed you by Richard Long, that would be an example that would qualify as land art. It's taking something from the natural environment, in this case, taking it into a museum, but Long also works actually on the surface of the earth, arranging stones. These art terms do come out, at least many of them, out of minimalism and the idea of reducing the image, also rejecting the ideas associated with abstract expressionism and getting down to something basic, something simple. These activities often also relate to concept art or idea art, and many of them are installations. Okay, an installation is something that is literally installed into a location, usually for a temporary period. That would apply to Christo. His creations generally run around 2 weeks in length, and then whoosh, they're gone. All of the work that went into creating it was only for a gig of 2 weeks. So there are many terms that we can use to describe Christo's creations and the works of other artists who work on the landscape. One of them also is the term happening or performance art. And there's a part of Christo's creations that would be performance as well. We'll see in a slide in a moment when we get to his Reichstag covering. Much of the process of making this is observed by viewers, and it's often pretty theatrical and very dramatic. So there is an element of performance. It is a happening that takes place. It is also a concept, an idea of the artist, and it is an installation. Other forms of land art might be referred to as process art also, and that would apply to Spiral Jetty. You do have a video on Spiral Jetty. And the reason that we can call that process art, in addition to land art or environmental art, is because over the course of time, nature will change the appearance of that work of art. In other words, the natural processes of nature will impact the appearance of the artwork itself. All these terms might give us a little bit of an idea of how fluid these styles are and how fluid the style names are. So Christo becomes a perfect example of helping us to see that. He begins his career by wrapping things. And if we take a look at the two examples, a wrapped bottle over here and a wrapped package over there, early in his career, coming out of, I'm going to say, influence of Dada, he begins to wrap found objects. By doing so, he obviously adds an element of mystery to them, but also turns them into abstract shapes. Christo will go from small wrappings to big wrappings, which are actually located on the earth. The man starts wrapping really big things, and I'm talking about bridges and buildings and islands and a portion of the coastline of Australia. This is one of my favorite of his wrappings, and it is very similar to 1914 in our textbook. It's the wrapped Reichstag. That's the German parliament. And it took Christo from 1971 to 1995 to actually make this happen. And I think he was simply successful in wearing the Germans down, wearing the German bureaucracy down to get permission to do this. It became a performance also with 90 climbers and over 100,000 square yards of fabric that were draped over this building as if it was a dust cover. The photographs of this were taken and sold. He can't make any money from the covering of the Reichstag itself, but he can sell photographs because this again was a temporary activity. The Germans aren't going to let their parliament be locked down forever. Usually with Christo, it is a matter of weeks, usually two, before his installation is altered, ended, and he moves on to another project. This, let's see, is what it looks like from the air. And one of the things that's amazing about Christo, honestly, is that his art creations attract scores and scores and scores of people. They're great fun. They involve people who are for them, against them, who say this is great art, who say this is not art at all. So they tend to involve people in the process of art making in a number of different ways. This will give you a little bit of an idea of the performance aspect of it. These are professional climbers, guys who climb mountains and know how to do it, who are actually putting the fabric on the Reichstag. Krista then is an amazing artist creating visual images and altering the experience we have when we are in the landscape. Probably the most, at least one of the most breathtaking of these was his gates located in Central Park in New York City. Christo worked on this project from 1979 to 2005 when it was actually installed in Central Park in New York. It was only up for 16 days in February of 2005, and the saffron colored gates, which were made out of fabric, were highlighted with the snow that was a part of Central Park at this period. There are 7,500 saffron colored fabric gates, and these gates stand about 16 feet in height, and they follow the edges of the pathways that were a part of Central Park. They wend through the park for around 23 miles, and they have free hanging banners, the orange fabric that we're looking at, that is about 7 feet in length. Christo had started this project, and the folks in New York said, "Get out of here. This is really, we don't want you messing with our park." However, after the success of the Reichstag project, during which 5 million people came to see the Reichstag, following 9/11, the mayor of New York, who was having a real problem getting tourists to come back to the city after our terrorist attack, he reaches out to Christo and he says, "Well, hey, let's think about this gate project. However, in order for you to do this project, you're going to have to compromise." And that's something that Christo is incredibly good at. It becomes, in fact, a part of the process of making the art. Christo originally wanted 15,000 gates. Well, the mayor of New York got him down to 7,500. Christo wanted it in the fall. Well, no, too many people use the park in the fall. So they moved it to February when fewer people would be actually engaged in activities in the park. And it turned out a really good thing because the snow made this look even more impressive. The mayor also demanded that the banners be shortened, which Christo was willing to do, and that they not go into the earth because by doing that it might damage the roots of trees. So Christo actually put these up on I'm going to say little stands, each of the legs of these gates. Christo pays $3 million for the use of the park. So he is actually paying New York City to put this up. How does Christo make a profit for survival from his art? Well, he makes drawings of the images, he makes collages, and there are photographs. And these can be sold, and that can pay for Christo's living expenses, his lifestyle, and also for his future art projects. Christo refuses grants or corporate donations because he wants to do his own thing. He doesn't want to be controlled by anyone. The cost to Christo overall for the gates was $21 million. The cost for the Reichstag was $15.2 million. But Christo was able to recover that and be able to continue living and working as an artist by selling his drawings, his collages, his photographs, his models, images that are related to the finished work of art, which is in fact only temporary. What matters, I guess you could come back to, is the idea, the design, or the concept for what it is that Christo has created. This is another view of the gates in New York City with tourists who have, in fact, come out to look at Christo's handiwork. I was one of those folks who came, and it was a popular, and most people thought, a beautiful artistic display. And more of the gates, even in February, people coming out to look at these. This is a detail of the way in which Christo compromised. You can see right here, this is a base of one of these. So the supports or the posts of the gates do not go into the earth. They don't hurt the ground in Central Park. And this, in fact, is one of the whole points of everything that Christo does. For Christo, it is the dialogue with the community that involves the community, and I'm going to say a joint or collaborative effort in the creation of Christo's works of art. Invariably, he has to have environmental studies done before he moves forward. He has a legal team that supports him because there are always lawsuits about trying to stop Christo from putting up his art. But for Christo, the real art of his projects is reaching the community, getting consensus, and moving forward. And by the time Christo's done, sometimes we're talking years and years and years, generally the community loves the works that Christo has created. He's managed not just to create a work of art, but also to engage many people in the process along the way. This photograph is just one sample I wanted to show you, and it shows Christo's operating method. This was for a project he did in California. It's called Running Fence. His fence went over the land of multiple landowners, and he had to go basically door to door to convince each of these individual owners of property to let him put a fence temporarily, a fabric fence again, blowing in the breeze over their land. So here's the young Christo talking to one of the older landowners, and I think the body language says everything. There's a little hostility, there's a little distance, but at the end of the day, Christo was able to convince this landowner and the community as a whole that the project would be, in fact, a good one. And Running Fence did get displayed in California. Christo then is an amazing land artist, or whatever you want to call him, a performance artist, a concept artist, an environmental artist, but someone who creates temporary installations on the landscape.